animal tackle, let my life end. Backdoor close, I'm one of the men. Underrated ghost, I'm setting trends. 24/7 mask on like London. No knife and artillery, no fighting. Told my bitch, only one tussles, no biting. Saying you support, share, post, start liking.
Okay, we back across the bridge for this one. We are not here to gamble though. You saw the title, let's not waste any time, here we go. The Federal Bureau of Investigation opened a criminal investigation in approximately October 2010, focusing on violence and heroin trafficking in the Stanley Holmes Village public housing development in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Based upon their investigation, the United States concluded that a drug organization, which the government called Crime Fam, had a fierce grip on Stanley Holmes Village and the nearby area, flooding the neighborhood with heroin and using violence to maintain exclusive control over its territory. This was a violent drug trafficking organization, and a number of different people came in and out of the conspiracy over time. They referred to themselves as Dirty Block or Crime Fam and by other names, and most lived in and around Stanley Holmes Village. They distributed a large amount of heroin sourced largely from Paterson, New Jersey over a period of years. In addition, they were involved in distribution of other types of drugs. The wiretap evidence alone established that it was an organization of persons who used intimidation, fear, and violence to maintain exclusive control over their territory and to control the activities of their potential rivals. They used weapons to protect themselves, their turf, their drugs, their stash houses and their customers from their drug rivals. Guns and violence were an integral part of the drug trafficking. Guns were used, stored, and shared by the persons in this conspiracy. When guns were needed or wanted, whether for an unfolding brawl, or when they were moving as a group or engaged in a risky transaction, they were able to retrieve or request them from stored locations known and available to others in the gang. Guns were bought and shared as the need arose. So, not only were guns used, but they were used collectively. It was said that Michael Derry, aka Coos, was leader of Crime Fam at the time, as others were locked up for murder and drugs. A cooperating witness stated, "Coos, that's who we was looking up to." Once the former leaders got locked up, Coos came home from jail. He was the oldest of that, so he took over. That's who we took orders from and we did things for, and we shot people for. That's what we did, that's who we sold drugs for. Besides the torturous assault of a dude named Ant 50, who had the audacity to sell his own heroin on the block which didn't come from Coos, the instances of violence included 1. Shootings with rival drug groups, including the Trevin Allen gang. 2. The shooting of Ant 50, resulting in his paralysis. 3. The brawl at a casino. 4. The killing of Derek Mack by the police, after he fled with a gun from a stash house. And 5. 3 shootings at a dude named Tiquin James, the final one was fatal. They also had beef with the 800 block, back Maryland Avenue gang, who was headed by guys such as Sean, but we are not detailing that part of the story. Let's get into the details of Crime Fam though. At one point in time, Crime Fam and a gang led by Trevin Allen, aka Cutoff, both sold heroin in Stanley Holmes Village. Something happened to that relationship, and as a result, Cutoff and his followers became the enemies of Crime Fam and were banned from selling drugs in Stanley Holmes Village and from even entering Crime Fam territory. Both groups began to shoot at each other. This bitter feud between rival drug gangs forms the backdrop of this story. A government cooperator testified that Ant 50 was kidnapped and brutally assaulted by Coos and others because he was selling heroin bought from someone other than Coos. Coos and Ant 50 was cool up until this point, but Coos saw it as a violation. The assault was alleged to have taken place at Coos's crib. It was said that Ant 50 gave a statement to authorities implicating Coos in the assault. In retaliation, in April of 2011, Coos ordered the shooting of Ant 50, which was carried out by Kevin King Jaffe Washington, who shot and paralyzed Ant 50. A cooperator said that Washington committed the shooting out of loyalty and indeed wanted to kill Ant 50, not paralyze him. Coos, along with Cutoff and another dude, pled guilty to aggravated assault for the brutal attack on Ant 50. Coos was sentenced to 364 days in state custody. The details are unclear, but the fallout between Cutoff and Coos, who had known each other since young, had something to do with the Ant 50 situation. Crazy thing is, most of the people involved in the conspiracy and the story in general are related either through blood or marriage. In fact, it is believed that Cutoff was married to Coos's cousin. Just to mention, sadly, Ant 50 passed away in 2019, but we are uncertain of the nature of his death. He has no other part in this story moving forward. Buck was recognized as the main enforcer for Crime Fam. Between 2010 and 2012, Buck lived with his mother and was not employed. He spent most of his time going around the Carver Hall public housing complex. For the first 9 to 10 months, he would only hang out with a friend. Shortly thereafter, he started to sell crack cocaine. He did not want to start selling dope because there were too many people selling dope in that area, and he did not want to cause trouble for himself. Eventually, he sold dope. He started to hang around the Stanley Holmes Village public housing complex because his girl at the time was staying there. He did not sell heroin in Stanley Holmes Village, he would only obtain heroin and sometimes Percocet pills in and around that area. According to Buck, Coos approached him because he knew that Buck sold heroin on Atlantic Avenue. Coos wanted Buck to buy his heroin from him. When asked by interviewers to explain how much he knew about Coos's drug distribution network, Buck advised that he was not very close with Coos because he heard that Coos was grimy. He would only go to Coos for heroin when he had to. However, he was aware that Coos would send his guys to sell drugs at the Renaissance Plaza located on Atlantic Avenue. Buck was also aware that Coos was in control of the heroin sold at Browns Park, located adjacent to Stanley Holmes Village. Either way it goes, as we stated, Buck would become the main enforcer for the Crime Fam organization. The war between Crime Fam and a gang led by Cutoff resulted in the death of Tiquin James aka Ty Weezy. Crime Fam enforcers had tried twice before to murder James, but failed. The first time Coos enforcers targeted Ty Weezy was in September 2011. The record evidence is that Buck and Jermaine Reynolds, aka Bam, attempted to shoot Ty Weezy at the residence of Cutoff's mom's house. The government summarized a September 14, 2011, Atlantic City jailhouse phone call between Coos and Christian Blackman, who discussed the events leading up to the shooting. The conversation was recorded by jail officials. During that call, Coos described how a rival drug dealer, Cedric Lindo, tried to shoot Coos after Lindo rolled up on Coos while he was in the third village of Stanley Holmes complex. Lindo let one shot off and ran. Coos was alleged to be with his child at the time, and Ty Weezy was alleged to have been with Lindo. Because of Ty Weezy's association with Lindo, Coos demanded that Ty Weezy pay Coos $10,000 as reparations for Lindo's attempt to kill him. Ty Weezy claimed that he did not have the money. Coos then described how two Crime Fam enforcers, Buck and Bam, tried to avenge the Lindo faction's attempted assassination of Coos. Bam and Buck, well armed, chased Ty Weezy into Cutoff's mother's crib. Fortunately for Ty Weezy, Bam had given Buck a blicky that didn't even work. Bam also had a dysfunctional gun. Bam walked up on Ty Weezy, tried to let 3 gunshots go, but the gun didn't even go off. Later, while Ty Weezy was hiding from Crime Fam killers, he asked Coos to meet him at an Atlantic City restaurant, apparently to resolve their dispute. Coos refused, explained that he was carrying a gun, and would not bring it to the restaurant that was frequented by the police. Then, on November 19, 2011, a second attempt to murder Ty Weezy. On Diston Avenue, Booker shot at Ty Weezy, but hit an associate, Kevin Green, in the face. A police investigation of the shooting scene corroborated a testimony at trial about the shooting. Allegedly, while hanging out in Browns Park with some of the Crime Wave Dirty Block members, Buck, completely unprovoked, jumped on a bicycle and chased Ty Weezy and Kevin Green, who had just ridden past Crime Fam associates on another bicycle. Buck chased them into a nearby apartment building and fired several bullets into the building. Buck was trying to shoot Ty Weezy, but accidentally hit Green. He was furious that they came through the block like it was all good. By January of 2012, Uthman Griffin was shot and killed as he ran towards Schoolhouse Apartments from his killer. He was the brother of Fresh Money, who was locked up at the time. Fresh Money, Zaymu, Taymu, and Grouch were the former leaders of the drug gang and were incarcerated. This left Coos the one on the street handling business. All of those guys we mentioned was right hands and best friends of Coos. We should also state that Lindo, who had shot at Coos once before, also lost his life, but in an unrelated matter. Allegedly, Lindo was letting too many people know that he was looking for guns, which meant he didn't have any and was therefore vulnerable. He was shot multiple times and killed the summer of 2012. On the night of December 23 and in the morning of December 24, 2012, there was a protracted brawl between associates of Crime Fam and other Atlantic City drug dealers at the Tropicana Hotel. It was captured on surveillance video. After the Tropicana incident, in a wiretapped phone call, Coos directed his enforcers, Mally, Irk, and Buck, to obtain and carry guns, especially in relation to Napper and his associates, who were drug trafficking rivals. The drug-related shootings were often retribution for a prior drug-related shooting, other violence, or threats to the Coos-led crime fam. One example was the killing of Coos's associate, Nas, who owed money to rival drug dealer, Napper's supplier. Mally, who was Coos's enforcer and Nas' older brother, then set out to avenge his younger brother's death. Sometime after that, the fight would ensue at the Tropicana casino between crime fam members and members of Napper's crew. Crime fam associates were instructed to obtain weapons and shoot Napper and his cousin, Pretty, on sight. On December 17, 2012, Derek Mack, a teenage boy who was standing guard outside a crime fam trap house, was shot and killed. The trap was a woman's house who would let the guys do their business there and was doing her own thing too, selling and using heroin on behalf of Coos. Side note. This woman once assisted one of the dealers with inserting cigarettes, heroin, marijuana and cocaine into his anal cavity as the dealer was about to turn himself in. Anyway, Derek Mack was killed by police after he refused to drop a .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun while he was running down the street. When his body was at the medical examiner or the morgue or whatever, heroin, with the brand name, No Limit, falls out of his pants. 2 or 3 days earlier, Coos was getting No Limit heroin from the suppliers in Patterson. Coos, his enforcer, Mally and others, discussed how Derek Mack was strapped and he was talking crazy stuff, like he was going to shoot it out with the police, if he had to. He would tell several people that. Mack would sometime guard the trap with others, such as Terry Davis. After Mack was killed, the organization moved to Martin Luther King Boulevard. At some point, Coos had determined his brother would be one of crime fam's enforcers. On October 8, 2012, according to an intercepted phone call, Coos told Kareem Bailey, another crime fam enforcer, that his brother Malik would be strapped when Coos put Malik on the payroll to sell heroin, which would occur when Malik was released from prison. Several weeks later, after leaving prison, Malik was reportedly involved in a dispute with one of Coos's associates, Meatball. 2 weeks later, on October 23, 2012, after he was back on the streets, Malik asked Coos for one of them things, a gun, and claimed, "I need it." Malik told Coos that he was at the Schoolhouse public housing complex and told Coos, "Just bring it." 25 minutes later, Bam complained to Coos that Malik was threatening the bros. According to Bam, Malik was threatening dudes, daring them to come out, and that he ain't fighting, he's talking about gun work. Bam claimed that Malik was bugging. Coos assured Bam that he only distributed ratchets for use against the enemies and rival drug dealers, not people from the Stanley Holmes village. Coos assured Bam that if he caught Malik using firearms against non-enemies, I'm effing him up. With all this, let's get into the third and fatal shooting of Ty Weezy. At 7:09 p.m. on February 10, 2013, in a wiretapped call, Malik spoke to his brother and told him to come to the Red Clots, a liquor store near Stanley Holmes Village, because he had located Ty Weezy outside in front of the store. He told Coos he should bring that, referring to a gun, and that he was dead serious. After a few minutes, Malik confirmed that Ty Weezy was by the Red Clots liquor store. Stay right there, because that ninja right in front of Red Clots, you heard. The surveillance video shows a few moments later, a tall thin man riding a bicycle in front of the liquor store shoot and killed Ty Weezy. Within minutes, Coos told Buck that Malik had killed Ty Weezy. Leak just splashed Ty Weezy. A .380 caliber Beretta semi-automatic handgun, confirmed through ballistic testing as the murder weapon in the shooting of Ty Weezy, was located not long after the homicide in a drop ceiling of a Green Street apartment, a home shared by Coos and his girl at the time. Law enforcement also found 18 bricks of heroin. There is a lot of things we didn't cover that happened during and before this timeline. 1. It's alleged that Coos said that he personally shot a dude named Miz. He had dressed up like a Muslim woman and shot Miz because the younger brother of a cut-off associate had shot at Buck. There was the murder of Shamir Harper and a lot of other things that happened on the other sides of this perspective. Remember, you had the Back Maryland gang as well. But yeah, Coos ruled with an iron fist. No drug rivals were permitted to sell heroin or other drugs, nor even enter Coos territory, under penalty of robbery, assault or death. If rivals sold heroin in Browns Park, the public park claimed by crime fam, they would be robbed, beat up, or shot. It was said that Koos had armed lookouts standing guard outside trap houses, employed enforcers that were ready to shoot, and decided who would be strapped and when guns were to be used. The evidence presented by the government at trial consisted of recordings of hundreds of telephone calls and text messages between Koos and Malik and over 19 other members of the gang. Physical evidence including the recovery of 20 firearms, ballistics evidence from shooting scenes, crime scene evidence from 8 different shooting scenes in Atlantic City, recovery of substantial quantities of heroin and drug packaging materials, approximately $40,000 in drug proceeds, the testimony of dozens of FBI agents and Atlantic City police detectives, ballistics experts, a narcotics expert, and 2 cooperating witnesses who had previously pleaded guilty to federal drug trafficking offenses. Some of the guys are home from the situation, but as for Koos and his brother Malik, they got life in prison. But this about wraps it up for this one, and as always, stay low and thanks for watching.